Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147, a New York City building code and zoning consulting firm here in New York City. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Paul Bralower from Pinnacle Realty, associate broker. Paul.
Hey, what's going on, sis? Good to see you.
Pleasure to have you.
Yeah,
Pleasure
good
to
to be
have you.
here.
So part of our show is always believing in the power of people and networking. So Paul and I actually met probably about a year ago through my partner, Dominic. You came up here and we chatted about real estate,
Yep.
which is always a fun conversation.
Yep.
And we then did a seminar at your office, a little bit about what's going on in Long Island City, what's going on with the different zoning changes that are coming about. And we really concentrated in a great conversation about Long Island City, but known to me, your firm specializes in industrial properties, and we never had anyone on the show to talk about industrial real estate.
Well, happy to be the first then.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're the first, Paul. So more importantly, you know, no one just wakes up when they're 5 years old and goes, "I want to be an industrial real estate broker." So tell us a little bit about your path, how you got to Pinnacle, and how you ended up in this real hot spot of New York City now.
Yeah. So I'm Paul from Pinnacle Realty. Thanks again for having me on the show.
Of course.
So next year is actually going to be my 18th year in the business. I started as an intern in 2007. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I grew up in Rockville Center, New York, which is a suburb in Nassau County.
Yeah.
Spent my whole life coming to the city. Friends, family worked in the city. New York City's the best, city in the world. So, happy to have lived my whole life
Plenty
here.
of real estate to sell.
Yeah, plenty of real estate to sell. And, I kind of fell into it as a summer intern in 2007. I ended up meeting a really, really great group of guys at the company I was working for. A year or two into it, I ended up leaving the company that I had the internship with and went with a bunch of guys to Pinnacle Realty and have been with them ever since for about 15 years.
That's great.
And I think it really is great because it's not something you see often where, in any type of business these days, especially real estate, where you have a group of people
That stay together.
that stay together for that long. And we're all friends. It's almost like a second family
That's
to me.
great.
And I think that culture has really helped us achieve the level of success that we're all able to achieve. And I think one thing that's important that I look back on that was important to some of the success that I have is I started in the real estate industry as an intern in 2007, but full time in the fall of 2008, which was an interesting time. If for those who don't remember, it was during basically the subprime financial crisis.
Correct.
So it wasn't exactly a booming time
Exactly.
to start. So I had to kind of grind it out and learn in a tougher market, which ended up being one of the best things for me. Because, I learned in an environment where, capital wasn't so easy to come by.
Correct. Deals didn't pencil out that easily.
No, but we still did okay. Another thing I should mention too, I was lucky enough to have worked not only with the same group of guys for 15 years, but I have a partner in the business who's actually my lifelong best friend.
That helps.
Yeah, by the name of Brendan Burke. So he's been my partner ever since we started as interns in 2007. Been partners ever since, and now we're some of the older guys at the firm, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
We each have 3 kids of our own that are all friends. So it's nice.
Listen, we all get older.
Yeah.
Another chapter gets written, but it's always nice to have the same people along the road with you.
Absolutely.
Dom and I know each other since we're 5 years old, and Sergio I met in high school. So Dom and I have been friends for 55 years. We've been partners, we've been brothers, we've been everything, So there's something to be said for that, and I think that there's always that support that helps us with our growth, that helps us with us being better people, being being better businessmen, just across the board. I think having that support and those values and that culture helps us succeed at whatever we do, whether we're selling real estate or, we're doing code consulting or entitlement.
Absolutely. And, the people that I work with have played a big part in my success. I've learned from some of the best people in the industry. And, I know you had a chance to meet a bunch of the guys.
Excellent.
They loved meeting you. It was, it was hysterical because it was just a game of, how many people do we know in common? And it was,
And it's a very small world. So,
Yeah.
So like I said at the beginning of the program, of the show, is we never really had anyone come in and talk a little bit about, industrial real estate. So just to give the viewers a little background, we've been around the industrial world a long time. We do a lot of warehouses. We do a lot of, logistic buildings. We've worked on a lot of the storage buildings that were booming all over
Sure.
New York City. We've done some big retail stores like Home Depot that are in manufacturing districts. So part of what's happened, in the evolution of zoning in New York City is they've reduced manufacturing, like in Williamsburg and Greenpoint, and they made it so that we could have housing. So what's happening is the amount of manufacturing land that was available has actually reduced in New York City. They didn't take it away from Williamsburg and said, okay, well, we'll just add it back somewhere else.
Yeah.
They reduced it. And now, over that time, as zoning evolves and things evolve, my look on it was, okay, so you had X amount, you've reduced it, thinking that, well, we don't really manufacture. But lo and behold, the world has changed. Yeah, we're not manufacturing as much maybe in New York City, but we're distributing way more product out of New York City. So now we need different uses. So tell us a little bit about you in your 17 years, right? 2008,
Yeah.
2024, we're in 2025. Tell me a little bit about where you see us today in the industrial real estate world. What are people building? What are they repurposing? Tell us a little bit about that.
I think you brought up some really good points that have to be touched upon when you talk about where we are today. I think you have to see where we've been to how we got there. And a lot of people forget that in, the old days, New York City was at one point the manufacturing capital of the country, if not the world. And a lot of the buildings were built for that purpose.
Correct. The garment district, all our manufacturing buildings here in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, everywhere.
Exactly.
Because we have water and we have planes and we have trucks. We have it all.
And population.
Right.
And,
Workers.
it was always one of the most, looking back at American history even, a lot of the manufacturing was done in, the cities and urban areas, particularly New York City, because that's where the populations were.
Right. They needed labor.
You needed the labor. So a lot of the buildings were built for the purpose of manufacturing. So they were traditional multi-story loft buildings. They might have had 11 or 12-foot ceilings, 1 or 2 loading docks, a freight elevator. And those buildings have, been repurposed over the years. A lot of them, like you said, were in the garment district or other
Which
areas
is going to
of
get
Manhattan.
all rezoned soon.
Yeah.
But again, that entire market is basically gone.
Pretty much, yeah. And, over the years, they got repurposed to, I guess, offices. Even some of them might have still been, fashion-related
Right,
businesses.
but they were pigeonholed based on zoning that they could only go to certain uses.
Correct.
Where now, if they get this new Midtown zoning change, that's going to allow greater opportunity to repurpose all of those buildings.
Sure. So one thing to keep in mind with industrial, the actual infrastructure of the building is very critical to what uses can be used in it.
Right.
For example, you talk about the change from manufacturing to warehousing and distribution.
Right.
A lot of warehousing and distribution buildings require higher ceilings.
Right. And stronger structural floor systems to hold the weight of what they're storing.
1 or 2 loading docks might not be sufficient.
Right.
For,
Now you need 4 or 5.
Yeah, exactly. That's just a couple little examples. And going back to what I was saying before about some of the changes that occurred over time, as manufacturing left the country and left the city,
The structures were still here.
the structures are still here, right? So you have to repurpose those buildings. And we're sort of flash forwarding a little bit through history, but flash forward from the days when manufacturing left the area and the country to the early 2000s during the Bloomberg administration. Mayor Bloomberg rezoned large swaths of land in Queens, Brooklyn,
Correct.
et cetera, and places like Long Island City, places like Williamsburg that had the best access to Manhattan,
Right.
were some of the manufacturing hubs, were where a lot of the M zone land got rezoned. So now all of a sudden, someone's property is not worth what it is as a warehouse or a former manufacturing plant.
It's worth a lot more.
It's worth a development site, and that now, looking back, that's 2001. So, that's multiple decades of
economic boom in those areas.
Yeah, but what was there was basically thousands of acres of M zone property that got taken away.
Well, that's where we started. So
Yeah.
it's funny that you bring that out. My father, when he came to this country, he worked on a garbage truck. He picked up the big containers in the street. And my father's accounts from Astoria were Chiclets Factory in Long Island City, and the Schlitz Brewery down on Kent Avenue.
That's hysterical.
And I used to go in the truck with my dad when I was a kid on the days off because my mom worked and we didn't have a babysitter. And I would go on the truck when I was 5 or 6 years old. But there were thousands of people working in those places.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands. There was Pfizer, there was Ronzoni, there was, there was manufacturing everywhere along Brooklyn. And those are the ones I can remember, But your point is well taken, is that as those companies started moving out, they realized that the value of being so close to Manhattan in Long Island City, even in the Bronx right now, by the Grand Concourse, Williamsburg, rezoning all of that, pulled all that manufacturing and all those swaths of M districts. So where did these companies go? Where did the new companies go? And that's where we are today. Where are they repurposing? They can't all be by JFK.
Yeah, so I think you're bringing up a good point. And I think it's important to talk about this as to how we get to the industrial market where we are today. The long story short of it is it's a supply-constrained market, mainly on the land front.
Right.
There's just not a lot of industrial land that's left remaining after a lot of this rezoning has occurred. Now, granted, a lot of the uses have left
Right.
not only the city and the country, the manufacturing.
Right. They're doing it somewhere else. They're not even in America.
And, the rezoning that occurred, I'm not saying that it was necessarily a bad thing, because if you look between World War II, the baby boomer generation and that Mayor Bloomberg rezoning, there hadn't been a tremendous amount of development in Queens or Brooklyn.
Correct.
In that time.
Not at the scale that we're looking at now.
No. So it kind of kickstarted, a major, reignition or gentrification of.
Right. Created new neighborhoods. I mean, it just.
Correct. And it's providing, a new base of population for the city, and it's put Queens and Brooklyn in a different place than where they were years ago.
100%.
A lot of young people are moving in there, a lot of young families, and
Correct.
that sort of thing. But back to the industrial, it's really one of the main reasons why it's a supply-constrained market. Is because
you pulled thousands of acres out.
Correct.
Yet, the vision, and another thing, and I don't know if this is true, but I know back when they started pulling it out, a lot of the manufacturing wasn't getting done, and actually the city had to put a restraint on storage buildings because the storage buildings were now then taken up wherever they could get them. They would put up these, so they ate up a chunk of it too.
Yeah, so they actually,
mandated it now.
You would know better than me on this one, but my understanding is that they put a special use requirement in the IBZ zone.
Correct.
For hotels and self-storage, because
Correct.
they were popping up
everywhere, and they weren't giving the opportunity that if someone really did want to manufacture, there was no sites.
Yeah. So look, I think today, to talk about where we are today, the main use of these buildings, or the highest demand that we see, is for warehousing and distribution.
Right.
And that was the case even prior to COVID. And what COVID did is
Accelerated it.
it accelerated a lot of trends, right? It accelerated the streaming trend where people are, at home watching lots of content, right?
People doing podcasts.
Yeah, people doing podcasts. But back to the streaming, people needed a place to create that content. So
Right.
a lot of that, a lot of the filming was done in New York City, and New York City actually has a great program for,
have
incentivizing film
Right.
development and
Sure.
stuff like that. And another one of the trends that was occurring before COVID and, got set literally, on fire after that was people getting stuff delivered to their house, e-commerce.
Right.
I'm sure it was like this in your house, but in my house, I open the door, I trip over, packages from
But even
everywhere.
just in general, and part of that, it's not just in New York City, Paul. To make a point about that, I have a place up in the country. I've been living there for about 6 months while we renovate our home, and I have driven on this road since I was 5 years old.
Sure.
I'll be 60 in January. In the last 3 years, they have opened up on Route 17 acres, 50, 100-acre sites that have been woods since I was 5 years old. They are building massive distribution centers.
Sure.
This is not just happening in New York City. This is not just happening in the suburbs of big cities. This is happening across the country. That it's drop ship everything. Before it was drop ship to a store, now it's drop ship direct to the consumer. It's a whole different logistics.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is, one of the main drivers behind the industrial market and the demand for space in this supply constrained market is servicing the population of New York City and Long Island and the tri-state area. Now it's not just delivering packages to people, it's delivering packages to people in a day or two.
Right.
In 24 hours, 48 hours. So
Now,
you
Paul,
have to be...
what is the biggest problem with that? Is that the sites, I'm sure that there's just, the size of the sites must be difficult because they're looking for bigger sites. And now, what we've seen, and we've done one already, where they're multi-layered distribution centers, which was, they never built those in New York City. We got ramps going around. There's one in the Bronx. We didn't work on that one, but we did the one at JFK. And that concept came out of like Seattle. It comes out of cities in Asia.
Asia and Europe, yeah.
Yeah, where there's, so do you see that trend starting to happen?
It's already happening.
Yeah.
It's already happening, and I think it's really exciting, and I think it's, in the first inning of it. And, it kind of makes sense because we just talked about
Go vertical instead of wider.
There's no land. There's, anywhere. Look, New York City real estate is very valuable,
Always.
right? So whenever there's an empty piece of land, someone's going to, buy it to build something on it, or
They'll figure it
use
out.
it. And, this has been going on now for decades and decades where the land or the real estate in New York has been extremely valuable. So now we're left with the problem that there's not a lot of land left, especially for industrial purposes. You have a lot of demand for, people to receive packages and, distribution to service the population of New York City, and not just distribution services, all of the industrial services for the city, construction,
Of course,
plumbing,
anything.
electrician, food
Anything.
services,
Everything.
commissaries, all different, there's still extreme demand for industrial space and a lack of supply. That's where we come in to help, whether it's helping the owners of these industrial properties,
To repurpose them.
maximize the value, finding the right tenant, or deciding if they're going to sell it or lease it. Or helping, people that are looking to, service this market find the right home. That's where we come in and help. But going back to the multi-story development, I think it was a really innovative solution.
Without a doubt.
There is, look, I don't claim to be an architectural expert, but I might know one. But one of the things that I am aware of is that I definitely think that there's a size requirement where you can't just do it on,
Right.
I think you need at least a couple acres
Yeah.
of land. And part of the reason is a lot of the trucks.
The trucks, just to get them in and out.
Correct.
All that circulation needs space. But Paul, it's funny that on Route 87, when I go back up to the country, there's a beverage distribution center.
Sure.
And they're in the countryside. They made it multi-level
Interesting.
because I think logistically, something is going on in the buildings that's different, where a truck could come in, drop it. They don't repackage it, but they take it right from that truck, put it on pallets, put it in smaller trucks. So the bigger trucks are unloading on the lower level,
Interesting.
and the smaller trucks are on the upper level. They put it in a freight, they bring them up, they load them, and they go right out. So the bigger trucks are on the lower section. The truck that's going out to the neighborhood.
Yes.
So they found a way, I think, from an architectural point of view, how to logistically not use the same loading dock for all the different trucks. That the bigger trucks are here, the smaller trucks are there, and we can move the product at this speed, at this rate, to get it to the consumer or to the store within the 24 and 48 hours.
I think you're bringing up a good point, and part of that, relating back to New York City, is that look, New York City wasn't really built for 53-foot trailers plus an 8-foot cab to be driving down, right?
Well, look,
so you're talking about some of these large e-commerce companies that are delivering packages
in Midtown Manhattan, you see
constantly,
it now.
daily.
They got 18-foot trucks and they got wagons and they're parking in the middle of the street. There's no loading berth.
Yeah,
So the congestion from that, and if you think about it, in one city block in Midtown Manhattan, there could be 500, 600 residents on one block if everybody gets one package a day.
But I don't think they're using those 53-foot trailers to deliver to people's homes.
Of course not.
So what they do is, in a lot of cases, and everybody's got a different, program, but a lot of cases they'll, use those to receive them, just like you were saying with the
Bring it to
bottling
the
company.
distribution center, and then from there, they break
correct.
it down into
They
smaller.
They have more like vans that people are probably seeing in their neighborhoods and homes. And, another key component of the industrial market is think about how many vehicles you need if you're going to be delivering to all of these places
Where you
all over
putting
the
them?
city. Where are you putting them?
Right.
So another trend that's emerged in the new state of the industrial
Parking.
market is, people have even created sort of a buzzword for it. It's called industrial outside storage,
Yes.
which is another word for land or parking.
Correct.
And it's not just only for vehicles. It could be for material storage, construction material
We have
storage.
a mutual friend who got completely out of the residential market.
Sure.
And he went right into that.
Yeah.
And he had that vision like 6 or 7 years ago. He knew how to get access to manufacturing land, and he created this thing for Verizon to have a place to put all their trucks or anybody. It's a crazy thing, but it's common sense.
The land has become so in demand as of the past few years that we've actually seen several scenarios where people are actually taking part of the building or all of a building, knocking it down and using it for parking. In some cases, yeah.
And it just makes sense. People say, why is there more traffic? Less people are not going to the office. You're right. But there's 5,000 more trucks in the neighborhood that have to deliver these packages.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trend that's not just going on in New York City, obviously. It's happening across the country, if not the world. And I think that was a trend that, was happening before COVID. And then when COVID came, it was like, all right, now I really am not going to the store and I'm just going to go get everything delivered to my house. And that is definitely feeding to the high demand for industrial space.
So in the manufacturing world of real estate, or the M zone,
Sure.
not really manufacturing, the M
Sure.
zone, right? So a couple of things are happening, right? One is the city is thinking outside the box, because before, if you were in a manufacturing district, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, you couldn't do this, you were very limited. And now they realize that, well, the world has changed.
Sure.
We need more parking for storage of vehicles. We need different uses that these existing buildings can be repurposed. So I think the city has acknowledged that, and they're implementing these changes. And of course, they never happen fast enough, but they are thinking about that, which I think leads to more possibilities for these older buildings, for these existing buildings to be repurposed.
Yeah, and look, these existing buildings still have a significant value.
Oh.
Even if they're a little bit obsolete for the large e-commerce companies, we are still selling and renting them very frequently and
at
for
good value.
very good values. And I think it's important to note that it's really important that each one of these building owners or tenants calls us or, someone like us, because, each one of the buildings sort of stands on its own.
Well, because they're unique in their own ways.
Correct.
Some
Correct.
have this, some have that, some have expansion, some don't. So every one of those is like starting fresh. And you could take your experience before and each one closer to a highway, closer to a main thoroughfare, whatever it might be, they all have something different to offer.
Correct. Because, for example, let's say it's a building that doesn't get rezoned for residential, right? And let's say it's a building that can't be part of a couple 100,000 square foot massive e-commerce site, right? Those two other use cases just took away a lot of other competing industrial properties for one that's remaining. So some other type of business that still needs to service the city is going to need to buy or lease that other existing building.
Because it checks off all the other boxes.
Well, not just that, because there's not as many options left.
Right.
So that's why I'm a big believer in these industrial buildings. Even if they're not in the residential zone, or even if they're, they don't have 20-foot ceilings, it's still got a really strong value because they're taking away so much of the other M-zone properties for other uses. Even before the e-commerce trend, they were taken away for residential, like we discussed.
Right.
Then, over the past few years, there was the
hotels and the storage.
The hotels and the storage, and then the film industry was sort of booming.
Right.
So, that's why, contact us and we'll be able to, really tell you what's going on in that specific block, what's going on in that specific neighborhood, and what features your building can take advantage of.
That's what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's an incredible journey, and like I said, you're really the first subject matter expert to come in and talk to us about it, because everybody talks about residential. Everybody's talking about we're in a housing crisis. We're also in an industrial crisis, that there's not enough supply for the demand sometimes, and it appears that it's growing. You go up to the Bronx, the same thing, all the Bronx waterfront, I go down the Bruckner from time to time. They built that big, restaurant depot. They're building all these massive buildings. I mean, they're not small buildings. They are huge structures. So, there is definitely still a need. We're still in one of the greatest places in the world.
The greatest, yeah.
Yeah. So as we go forward, we're wrapping up 2024, going to 2025, Paul. Good friend of mine, Andrew Peters, works for Curry and Brown. He gets a segue in this show every time I have a show. He's a cost estimator, and someone comes to him and tries to project, I want to build a manufacturing building in 2027 in the Bronx. How much is it going to cost me per square foot? And his job, without a set of plans, is to say it's going to cost you $1,100 a square foot.
Yeah.
And I'm always amazed at how he does it. But he does exactly what realtors do, right? They look at past, they look at supply, they look at demand, they look at cost, and they project what they can sell a building, what they can lease a building for, right? And he does that for construction costs. So his saying always is that the rear view mirror is about this big, but the windshield's this big. Our job is to look back a little bit, but really everything is right in front of us, and we got to look forward.
Yeah.
So as we go into 2025, got a lot of moving parts in New York City and across the country. First, Mayor's very aggressive to bring business back here. Tech business, try to get more affordable housing, created the city of yes, has 3 different parts. All of it has to do with making New York City stronger economically, from apartments to building to construction to everything. Businesses, and bringing people that want to be here. As we go forward, we got a new president. We potentially have interest rates coming down. We got tariffs maybe coming in. I mean, we got a lot of moving parts. How do you think this affects the industrial properties? And this is obviously your opinion. This is
Sure.
not fact. But if you take all of these things, I'm sure there's a lot of positive things. But give us your projection on where you think the industrial market's going to be for the next year or two.
You know, I always like to look a little longer out than just a year or two.
That's fine.
Because industrial tends to be a little bit of a slower moving thing, you know, because it's a smaller segment of the market than residential or, you know, commercial when you're talking about square footage.
Of course.
Particularly. You know, but it's hard to say that industrial is not going to continue the upward trend. Given mainly the main reason, and I know I said it before, but I'm going to say it again, is we've lost so much M zone land
That
to
the
other
supply
purposes
has-
that the supply is constrained. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be peaks and valleys like in any market, but in my opinion, I think the trend's going to continue. I think people are starting to realize, as far as interest rates, that the days of 2 or 3 or 4%
They're long
interest
gone.
rates are long gone. And I think we've now had a year or two of people adjusting to that new reality.
Right, they could put, you know, if it pencils out now, they know that at that rate, at this return, this can work.
Yeah,
Where
and-
at the beginning it was, oh, well, it's so high, I'm not borrowing money at that because they didn't get adjusted to it.
I mean, even in the second half of this year, we have seen a big uptick in, you know, both sales and leasing activity. And in my opinion, I think a lot of it is because people are deciding, okay, well, this is the new normal.
Right.
This is life.
If not, I got to sit at the sidelines.
Yeah, this is life after COVID. This is life after, you know, the interest rate readjustment hike, whatever you want to call it. And we need to deal with the new reality, and we need to, you know, if we don't, you know, make a move, you know, someone else is going to take the
Exactly.
space.
Well, that was my point.
Or
You
someone
can't
else
sit
is
on the
going to make
sidelines
a
forever.
bigger move in the New York City, you know, market. So I personally think that the trend's going to continue slow. I don't think 25 to 24 is going to be, you know, like all of a sudden it's going to be a massive change one way
But
or
it's
the
gonna
other.
be steady.
I think it's going to continue to, you know, be a market where there's very limited supply. There's strong demand from multiple different type of uses, whether it's the e-commerce world, whether it's, you know, the film industry or the, you know, the people servicing the film industry, you know, construction industry. There's a lot of different
just
industries.
so many-
There's so many. There's so
and
many.
there's new
industries.
markets.
Yeah.
There's new markets that we probably on this show for 30 minutes
Yeah.
aren't even thinking about.
Yeah.
You know, like where do people store this? Where do people redo and what we're used to thinking could be totally different than what
I'll give you one real quick. I love tennis. I love pickleball.
Oh.
I get calls from people looking to do pickleball or other, you know, sort of
do you know
recreational
how many zoning
sports.
studies we've done
I
on that?
believe it. I
Can we put a bubble on our roof?
Yeah.
You know, because they need big square footage for those.
Well, not only that, you need certain column spacing.
Right.
You need certain ceiling heights. And what is the first type of properties they're looking at doing those things that have that? It's industrial. It's another reason. So it's another thing that sort of emerged after COVID, where in this world where people are sort of getting back together, doing things in person again, and, you know, trying to be more active. And, you know, I think it's great in that sense. And people are looking for more of an experience. People are looking, and as New York City, particularly Queens and Brooklyn and the Bronx even, as the populations continue to grow and there's these new residential markets growing,
They need more people. They need more trucks to deliver goods. They need more of this. They need more of that.
yeah, and or more places for people to work out, more people to, of
course.
people to play pickleball, or people to, you know, whatever, get food delivered, get packages delivered. So that's why I think the industrial market's going to sort of continue
Oh, listen,
its upward
they
trajectory.
just, you know, besides Williamsburg, you know, probably before your time, in Gowanus, Design 2147 did an enormous amount of work in that area. There were like entrepreneurs popping up trying to create clubs and venues, catering houses, because they couldn't find real estate anywhere else. And now that's all gone.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect, you know, kind of leads into what I was saying a little bit too. Long Island City, Williamsburg, a lot of these places, there's these newer uses that are popping up to support the residents there that are taking, industrial space and repurposing them, putting even further constraint on the industrial market. So, I think that's why, again, it's ultra important that these owners of industrial property or the people looking for industrial property, they reach out to us, and we can help them,
And
guide them.
Guide them. That's
And when they want to repurpose the building, I think we know somebody that can help them, deal with the navigation of those landscapes.
and it's funny, over the years, before we wrap it up, over the years we've gotten crazy calls. Like, a famous chef says, I want to start a catering business.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking for a piece of property, anywhere. And we're like, okay, but I need it done like right away. I want to bring in these trailers and put them on a lot. And I'm like, wait, you need gas, you need a sewer, you need this. Yeah, I know, but we need this. I'm like, wait, you can't just do that. But they were so desperate.
Yeah, we
to do that. And we've been on a phenomenal project and an incredible journey at Industry City with Jamestown. And you know what? It is amazing to watch how that place has grown into such an incredible, I want to say, experience. I don't want to say it's a building anymore. Just walking the site, outdoor space, indoor space, young entrepreneurs, big corporate amount. They've just made it work, and they've done such a great job. And I think that is where New York City separates us from a lot of other places, that someone can have that vision, implement it, and find a way to get these businesses to go there and do it. And I think that's part of your job. It's part of my job, helping them to find a way to do it, helping them find pieces of property like that. So to me, affordable housing gets so much of the press, and commercial office buildings, they're all empty. They get so much of the press. But when you go through the real deal, the manufacturing side doesn't get all that press like the other sectors do.
Yeah.
And yet there's so much of it that's needed. So, you're just coming in and sharing all of this knowledge with my viewers is great, Paul.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. I think we're just scratching the surface of some of this stuff. Part of the reason why I love what I do is I love, like you said, the story about the guy that wants to come in and create this, special culinary experience. To me, I love meeting all the different people
and their ideas.
And I love, seeing their ideas come to life. I love, when somebody's starting a business or somebody is growing a business, and I love staying in touch with somebody after I sold them a building, or staying in touch
like you did with Dom and his son.
So I don't even know if we spoke about that. Part of the reason we first met is I have a client who became a very close friend, and we were working on a property together in the Bronx, and it had a complicated zoning. And he said, hey, why don't you come meet with me? I have a meeting with my zoning experts. Sure enough, it was Dominic, your partner, and this was going back a decade ago. And Dominic and I really hit it off. We knew some of the same people, and he said, hey, by the way, keep an eye out for, a little building that I want to try to, I've got an idea with my son who's in, the craft food and beer business.
Yeah.
And, I kept in touch with Dominic after that, and sure enough, I don't know, 5 or 6 years later, we found him a great building in Long Island City.
Awesome. And he did an incredible job.
It's beautiful.
And we actually had Joe on the show.
Oh, that's great.
As a young entrepreneur getting into the real estate world. And he did a great job about acquiring the property, the difficulties, getting to a closing, getting into construction.
Sure.
And he's been so busy, but he's going to come on the show to talk about now that the bar is open there in Long Island City. We're going to have him come in and tell us about his journey, because I think that part of my show is about people's journey, not only their personal journey, like yourself, Paul, but also the real estate journey.
Sure.
You have a story to tell of where you saw it from 2007 to now. I have a story that started in 1986, and I've been through it for 4 decades. You know, it there's a story, there's history there, and people like to hear that. They like to, because I think that history tells us something, but it also allows us to create new images and new visions, and I think that's what's going to happen in the manufacturing world and the industrial real estate world.
I mean,
there's no question.
There's a lot of really cool stuff going on, and it's a great time to be doing this. It's a great.
I continue to hope that we always on this show on almost every episode when I go back and I listen to them and we edit them. There's one consistency that we always talk about, and that is when the city can partner up with private developers and there's a partnership, they can create anything. If they create ways for people to say, oh my God, that's a great building. How can I achieve it versus no, I can't. And I think that when you get that great bond, great things happen. The studio world, they did it, right? A lot of the manufacturing incentives, they've done it. The creativity with the multi-level distribution centers, they did it. They found ways together, the government and the private and corporate world, to make it work. And I think we need more of that. And I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in kind of going back to what we said, the story with Joe, Dominic's son. You need somebody behind, you need somebody with the vision, with the drive to push it through. And that's why I like doing what I do, because I get to meet all different types of people like that. And
you're part of their history. You're part of the process.
It's the beginning part. And
whatever it is.
And I like being able to help, whether it's somebody that had a business in that, location for many years and now is looking to reap the benefits of it and retire, or it's somebody that's starting the journey and is excited about starting the business. It's really cool that I get to be a part of that.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, Paul.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of
fun.
Yeah.
And we look forward to having you back.
I would love it. Great.
We'll come back. We're going to look maybe next in the fall. You come back, and again, you're going to be our industrial real estate guru. So we're looking forward to having you back. Hopefully some of the visions that the city has will be profitable and bring some good projects ahead for you in the upcoming year.
I hope so. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for having me.